Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us again for another episode of Fearless Females. So today we're talking with Janine. And she told a story that was so familiar to me. She said when she was reflecting on her early career, she entered a primarily male-dominant commercial environment with a really defined playbook, meaning there was a clear model of success. This is the way you do it. This is the way you're trained. This is how you make a sale. These are the exact words you say. You figure it out. And the unspoken rule was that if you wanted to be successful, you had to do the things in this order, the way that they said they needed to be done. So she did, because much like me, I don't like getting less than an A in any class that I've ever taken. And so she succeeded. She did what many high achievers do. She adapted, she conformed, she tried to fit in the mold. But she realized that this wasn't her playbook. It didn't make her successful. She says, it took me a really long time to find my own voice. But once she did, she became very successful. She didn't sell the way that they did. She didn't market the way that they did. She didn't close the way that they did. I find that a lot of times in financial services too, because, they've been doing things the same way for 100 years. And finance is a world that doesn't like to change really easily either. So the idea of bringing a new way of doing things or a new take on it, or even just a more feminine voice, it feels like you have to do it their way, exactly that order, where really, if you find your own voice and your own way and you kind of lean into that, you are so much more successful because you're being authentic. You're doing yourself. You're not trying to fit somebody else's version of who you should be. And I just loved that she brought that up. I loved that she talked about that. And I've run into it so many places in my career that I've had to find a voice or else just do what they told me to do. And I will admit, early in my career, it was a lot of, I just did what they told me to do. And then I realized that my unique voice, the unique way I did things, was actually better. It worked better for me because it was more me. So I love this interview with Janine. Let's get started. Good morning, Fearless Females. So we're here today with Janine McMurdie. She is the Chief Commercial Officer for Pictor. And thank you so much for joining us today, Janine, and just sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
It's really good to be here, Lorie. Thanks for having me.
So my first question is always actually the favorite one that I ask, and it's, I'm a reader. I love books. What is your favorite book?
I actually felt that this one was a little daunting. I am a voracious reader, and trying to pick a couple of favorites is always a hard thing. I have to start by saying, though, that I am so grateful to my mother, who instilled the love of reading in me. My mother left high school when she was 16. She was ill and whatnot, but one of the smartest people that was ever in my life, and it's because of her love of reading. She read everything, right? So I had to put that plug in for my mother. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't pick one, so I picked two. And I think there's a reason. So one's much more sciencey, and the other one is more literature-based. So The Emperor of All Maladies, it is a very human biography of cancer. And it's about and as a layperson, you'll love it. As a scientist, I loved it and embraced it. The author does such a good job of making it into a story, mm-hmm. rather than, just about science, but it's very human, and it looks at the progress and the lack of progress that we've made in cancer treatment and therapy, and just how long that this journey has been going on. So to me, it's really about a story of endurance and, that we still have a lot of work to do, but scientifically it makes you understand that this is a marathon and not a sprint, right? So beautiful book. It's daunting. It's about, I don't know, 1,000 pages, but it's worth every word. And then the other is the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. And she's also a biologist, which is interesting, but it's a work of fiction. And it is a truly inspiring tale of women who are thrown into an impossible scenario. It has to do with being in a man's world in both geography, in the era that it was written, in the country it takes place in the Congo. And it is these women who basically try and make all the silly things that men do right. And the men don't anyway, it's such a brilliant story. And she's one of my favorite authors. So, I really feel like these two books tell a story about the way I think, where one is about the complexity of science and the other is about the complexity of people. And, I'm also passionate about just how well written they are, but they are amazing books. You must read them if you have not yet.
Yeah, I actually haven't read either one of those. I've heard of the Poisonwood Bible, but I haven't actually delved into it, and that makes me want to. So
great books
on my stack.
Fun fact: it was written in the 90s, and I think I read it sometime right after it came out. And I very recently went back and read it again because you have a different perspective, right? Your whole world changes in a decade or two, and it was just as good and probably even better reading it the second time.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting because I can go back and read books. I can watch television shows. I can read books over again because I just get something different depending on where I'm at in my life and what stage I'm at and what I'm going through. I get so much out of these, the literature, depending on where I'm at in my life, that it feels like a totally different experience. So I love that you do that.
Yeah. Well, we evolve, right? And if we don't, we are just static and I think it's sad if we're not changing all the time. My nose is running, so pardon me.
Okay.
We're going to edit that out, so that'll be great.
Perfect. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Janine. Tell me about how you got started, kind of how you got where you're at, what you do today. Did you always know what you wanted to be? Tell me just a little bit about your journey.
I feel like my journey was not linear. And I know so many people who had the 10-year plan, had the 20-year plan, they knew exactly. And I think mine started off with the best of intentions. I came to California from Canada as a young woman, as a student. And not long after I got here, I was actually in an accident that was one part tragic and then left me with some real physical challenges, and it upended my whole world. But I think that that's actually where my story began, because I learned what the things were that I could control and really leaned into that discipline. So I have a lot of rules that I live by, and that is the discipline that I learned because there were certain things that I could control. To this day, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, I put my shoes on, and I go work out, and I really lean into the mental part of my life that I maybe can control. But because of that, I felt there might have been something bigger for me, and I needed to find it. So I was always really enthralled with the sciences. But I think that helped me think about people and all the other things, not just the mental and the business and all of that. So I started in genetics. I started at Amgen. I loved being in the lab. I loved experiments and all of that. But I also really loved the human side. And so it turns out the commercial world was just waiting for me. And I didn't necessarily know it early on. But understanding that I could combine the very human interaction and science and have the capability to build incredible things early on was just really exciting. And at Pictor today, I went into a variety of commercial roles, ended up at Pictor, and we are taking very sophisticated technology and we're building it in ways that make it practical, deployable, and really scalable. And I didn't have a straight journey, but it is incredibly fulfilling. I love to be able to sit down with a group of smart people and have a really complex problem and, get everybody in the room to bring their best selves and solve a problem. And, that's what excites me at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I grew up in a family of engineers, and in fact, I am literally the only person in my family who does not have an engineering degree. And so I got to see that math, science, that very analytical brain. I probably actually have the brain with, finance too. But there's a special skill set where you can take that analytical, like research kind of information and translate it and have that people and that human and that empathetic interaction too, that so you can be in both worlds. And it's a very specific skill set for these highly technical fields, but it sounds like that's where you gravitated to.
Yeah, and again, without knowing that was sort of the end goal,
Yeah.
I did sort of make sure I was open to opportunities along the way and watch things unfold and, reached out for the things that I really felt were where I fit. Yeah, so it wasn't linear, but I'm grateful for every step of the process. All the people I've met along the way, all the amazing technologies that have been brought to light because the teams I've been on or the teams I was leading were able to bring them into clinical practice and truly help the human condition evolve. And which is, brings me right back to where I am at Pictor, is the idea that we can democratize new technologies and get them into the hands of clinicians to make better clinical decisions on a daily basis. To me, it's the reason I put my feet on the floor in the morning. I get very, very excited about the things that I do, but it's really because there's a person, a patient at the end of the story. The science is phenomenal. And then the teams that we put together to do this that's the other part that just really gets me really excited. The fact that we can be empathetic and authentic and give people the space to bring their brilliant minds, right? Bring the science, bring, all the things that they have inside them to the table and put that together so that the sum is so much greater than the parts.
Yeah, I love being in rooms where there are so many smart people thinking up ideas and solutions for problems. I think that really does, it energizes you. It makes you a better person and gives you a lot of faith in humanity sometimes just to see that process. So was your training, your college education, was it in biology or?
Yeah, so it's all in science. So an undergrad in molecular and cellular biology and a master's degree in genetics. I feel like I got an MBA along the way, even though I don't have that degree. But I really spent the time and the training. Maybe not in traditional university, but a lot of different courses and work, and then just being in the room with people who could walk the walk and talk the talk and took me under their wing, or I followed them around like a puppy dog, whatever, right, to get that training. But some of it, like you said, is kind of innate, and it's giving yourself the space to let those things come through, right? That you are your innate capabilities and to let them shine. But it's not necessarily intuitive that's where, like, I never grew up saying, oh, I'm going to be a salesperson. Like it was always about the science, or, I wanted to be a doctor at one point. I wanted to be an engineer at one point. But to kind of let the ebb and flow of the people that I got to know. There was actually a woman when I was at Amgen who was on the commercial side at one of the companies I interacted with, and she pulled me aside one day and said, "You would be great at this." And I thought, I never would have thought that, right? But the more I dug into it, the more I realized that it's exactly where I needed to be.
I like that idea, kind of
Yeah.
staying open to the possibilities that and open to mentorship, to suggestion, to, help along the way to kind of get you where you were always meant to be. It doesn't feel very engineery, very straight liney, very like checklisty,
Yeah.
but I do see where there's a space for that, like that maybe it takes both. Maybe it takes all that technical knowledge that you learned through your training and stuff like that, plus the ability to stay open and talk with people and interact with different roles to kind of get you where you need to be.
Yeah, and I'm not being glib when I talk about people who have their 10-year plan and their checklist and all of that, but I don't think it allows the space to be open to opportunities that arise along the way if you are intractable and you must stay on your career path. So, I think a plan is great, but being able to diverge from that when there is something amazing, an opportunity, and to be able to not only be open to it, but to be able to see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is, if you kind of look over your journey, is there an investment that you made in yourself that you're like, oh my gosh, I am just so glad I did that because I don't think I would have ended up the person I am today without doing that?
Yeah. So I was a mother at 24. I was still going to school. I had a husband and a child and some stepchildren and a career that I was progressing toward. And it really felt like my personal and physical needs were last on the list. But I had developed this whole training journey. So I run marathons and triathlons, and I really love physical fitness because it helps my brain more than anything. And I, for the longest time, felt a lot of guilt around that, right? Because if I was out on a run or, I'd have to get somebody to pick up the kids at carpool because I was going to a training, whatever it was. I felt guilty about that because I was taking away from my responsibilities. And I realized young enough, which was good, that investment that I was making in me made me a better mother. It made me a better student. It made me a better partner. It just made me better, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was an investment in everything that I did and all the people I loved and all of that. But to get past that guilt, that to me was sort of my epiphany with all the training. So I still to this day, I mean, I'm decades into this, and I think it's really important. And then when you're developing teams, I think that this is also an opportunity to understand what makes people tick, right? Like, what are the things that might not have anything to do with their role, etc., but will make them better people, so they're better employees and they're better at their job and they're just better. So I think it's really important to think about what that is in you so that you can bring that out in others.
Oh, that's a really good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I've often thought like, yeah, you suffer from I kind of thought of it as mom guilt, but I think that anytime you take time out to take care of yourself at the expense of maybe doing something for someone else, you feel sort of guilty about that. But we shouldn't be feeling guilty about it. Like, that is self-care. It does take care of us. But I never really took the second step and sort of thought about, well, if I have these passions that fill my soul, in addition, that finding out what other people's passions are probably helps them fill their soul. And it's just kind of fun to know what people are passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. And I honestly believe that empathy and authenticity are the best things that women can bring to their roles to differentiate us from men, but also to really bring out the best in others. And I think that that is really good business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I would vote for that.
Awesome.
What is the worst advice someone gave you? Janine, did you ever have like a time when you got some really bad advice? And I'm always curious as to, did you take the advice or did you not?
Yeah. You did send me questions in advance, when I read that, I had to giggle. So I have someone who is true to this day, truly, deeply an important person in my life. And when I was defining my own career path, they told me, because I said, oh, I'd really like to be a doctor or, an engineer. And they said, oh, no. What you need to do is you need to become a dentist. And they mapped it out, like the ROI, the years that you spend training, and then the years that you spend as a high earning, the income potential, just, mapped it out. And I remember thinking, there is no way. I can do the math on that, and on paper, sure, but there's no passion in this for me. So it's definitely the best advice that I never took. And it's because, again, it's the passion, right? Like, I need something that I can get behind and feel like I am going to, change the world, fuel my soul, all that sort of thing. And I'm not dissing dentists in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
We need them. They're very important people. They have, there are certain ways that I think about, like cleft palates and things like that. They can change people's lives insurmountably. Just not my path.
Yeah, just not my thing. Yeah, I know. You tell me about that, and I think I told you I come from a full family of engineers, and I remember taking a car trip with my younger brother once, and he spent about 2 hours explaining the flow of the sewer system through a building. Like, I could care less. I was half asleep. It was all I could do to stay interested for even a minute, but he was passionate about this. And I am like, that man loves his job. And probably in the same way that people are they think I'm a little bit strange for my finance. So there does have to be a level of like, yeah, maybe like pure ROI dentistry is probably the right way to go. But for Janine, that there was no way.
No. I really thought about, like, staring into people's mouths all day long just sounded horrifying.
Yeah. All of the bodily fluid jobs are out for me. I am so in it for the spreadsheets. I'm like,
see, you don't watch The Pit then.
well, I appreciate that other people do it.
Yeah.
But I have to fast forward through all the gory parts. I'm like, oh, yuck. So,
right. But it also shows that there's something for everyone, right? You talked about the spreadsheets. Yeah, I love a good spreadsheet, but not every day, all day, right? Like, and staring into people's mouths or whatever it is. But it's sort of having that capacity to understand that it's more than ROI. It's more than, it's whatever fills your soul.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that brings us back to that point that you made earlier about kind of finding out what gives you energy or what fills your soul a little bit. So even if it doesn't specifically tie into your job, but sometimes it does. Sometimes it does tie into your job, and understanding where your passions lay so that you're not stuck staring into a mouth for dental work when you should be, a biologist or something like that. So what about a do-over? I don't necessarily like to think of it as regrets exactly, but there are times when I'm like, oh my gosh, I could do that situation so much better. If I could go back and do it again, I know exactly how I'd fix it.
Yeah. So I have to say, especially coming into the commercial roles, 99% of my peers and those that I wanted to emulate were male. And there's kind of a formula, and there is a kind of cookie cutter way that a lot of those individuals represented themselves. And you think about fake it till you make it. Well, I always thought that was what you had to conform to in order to fit that mold and be successful in a commercial role. And it took me a really long time to find my own stride and to find my own voice and to be authentic. And I wish I could go back and, stop trying to be something I wasn't, because that was 100% not tied to my success. What was tied to my success was when I dropped the barriers and, sat around that table and talked to all those people and helped, pull a deal together because everybody was bringing their best selves and the best ideas, and it was good for people, it was good for science, and it was good for the business. And I wasn't trying to, be something I wasn't. So I would go back and be more authentic if I could, and stop trying to be something I wasn't.
Yeah. It is hard, especially when the playbook works so well for maybe a part of the people who do it, and they just assume that it's going to work well for everybody who does that role. But we bring a unique perspective to things and a unique way of doing things, and I think a lot of times this is the way it's been done for 50 years or 100 years, and this is the way it needs to continue to be done if you want to be successful. And I think that it's great that we're asking some of those questions, like, why? Why does it need to be done that way? I feel like a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, why, Mom? Why?
But that's one of the things that they teach you in science, right? Is ask the why, and don't just ask it once, right? There's the 5 whys, and that's in business, that's in science, but really trying to tip those norms on their head, I think is so critical. And in the business world, you go through all of the trainings, right? The Miller-Hymans and all of them, and it's all spreadsheets, and it's all the questions, and it's all the boxes you have to fill in. And I'm not saying that work is not important. I think it's crucial and critical to be successful, to have all the questions answered so you can make an informed decision and you can move a deal forward and all of these things. But it's not the only way to do it. And these very smart people who have tried to distill it down, all the things down in business to a formula, it never goes as planned. And yes, you need to have all the 17 different options, but if you bring something different to the table, often you get a better result, right? Like you don't have to go down the same path that everybody else has done. And I really think that was the thing that I learned really early. Well, not early enough, but I wish I learned early. But that's when my career pivoted for the better, is when I could really tap into that. And I wasn't trying to be someone else. I was trying to be me.
I like that.
Yeah.
If you could go back and high five yourself for one really great past financial decision, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, I came to California when I was a student, and just all of the opportunities here, right? Early on, investing in real estate, having the opportunity to really have the scientific community that is burgeoning and at that time, but still growing in California, all the innovation, that was the best decision that I kind of fell into. Mm-hmm. But yeah, having just access to the people, the climate, all of the things that were exploding in the financial community at that point in time too. So, I got into real estate back when it was affordable, and, it has set me up for wonderful future success, and then put me in the nexus of all of the opportunity with biotech. And, I moved to Amgen country 8 years into Amgen, right? So I really had access to the best technology, the best of innovation. And, I got in on the ground floor of that. And, it's not just financially, but it has shaped my world in every way, you can imagine.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
That the situation or the actual environment that you find yourself in actually does make a difference.
it does. It does. And, I think there's a lot of diversification, in terms of the geography where we're seeing biotech, and it's not just, LA and Boston and San Francisco and San Diego. It's really growing, but there's a lot to be said for that. Growing up in rural small town America, it makes it harder, definitely. So I was very fortunate to be able to make that move from a very small town in Canada to a place where it is the center of biotech.
That's interesting. And something that I hadn't really considered. I mean, you know that surrounding yourself with the best and brightest minds in whatever industry you're in kind of helps you grow and get better. But we're such a virtual world now that it's hard to remember sometimes, or hard to dial down in the fact that location was a big deal. And it still probably is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. As you say, technology makes it better, but being immersed in it, I don't know that there's any substitution for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
What scared you the most when you started your career? And does it still scare you?
Yeah. I think maybe, mm, I think it's making the right decisions, right? Putting yourself in the right place. And you know it when you have it, right? Like when you've made a really good decision and you've ended up somewhere just brilliant. I took a leap and got out of really big industry. So I went from Amgen to what then became Thermo Fisher, right, through mergers and acquisitions. And that was very easy, right? Like it's a big safety net, big organization. So leaping into these smaller companies, but you trust your instincts, right? So once you've been around long enough, you can vet a technology. And it's not just about the technology, right? It's about the people.
Yeah.
And the more that I'm entrenched in this world and the more I, you can have the greatest technology, but without the right people, it's not going to go anywhere. So making the decisions to make a leap from an organization. So I had a great exit at Agena Bioscience, led by a phenomenal CEO, still a really good friend of mine, Pete Dansky. And that was a big leap because I went from a big organization to what was ostensibly a startup at that time. And then I did that, just not that long ago, coming to Pictor. But again, it was the people. And the CEO at Pictor is a woman that I've known forever. And to be part of a woman led organization, a woman who leads it with great science and great integrity and great empathy and incredible authenticity, to me, that is, I never even looked back. I just jumped with this one because I just knew it was going to be great. The technology is amazing. We're taking really complex proteomics and bringing it forward as a diagnostic. And we did this in genetics years ago, right? So I was part of the genomic revolution, and now this is the proteomic revolution. So I have so much faith in this technology, but without the leadership and the ability and the space for me to do my job without having handcuffs and, just having all the wonderful support, that is what makes me just very grounded in decisions like this. But it's scary, right? Like when you're in a startup world, and they don't all go, right? Like a lot of startups fail, as we know, to make those leaps. But then again, to have successes, but you have the failures and you realize, yeah, it's not that scary, right? Like you get up and you dust yourself off and you make better decisions and you learn so much and you take that forward with you. So I think the first time is the scariest, and then you get to enjoy that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that I agree. I think that sometimes you look at these decisions and you think it's life or death decision. You think it's like either I'm going to succeed wildly or I'm going to be like living on the streets, right? And that's the way you frame it in your brain.
There's nothing in between.
Yeah. And it's most of the time it turns out okay, or you work there for a while and you're like, this doesn't really fit me. I need to look for a place that fits a little bit better. But even with the failures, even if you do have a spectacular failure, you're probably not living on the streets and eating out of, I don't know, garbage cans or something like that.
Yeah, but I think that the failures and even the fear, you can harness that, right? And they can sharpen your abilities. You use them to learn and get better. And sometimes having, like, if it's not a little bit scary, it might not be worth doing, right? Like that. I think you use that adrenaline rush, or I do, right, to like catapult you forward. Like, okay, we got this, and you take a deep breath, and it's really sweeter. The success is if it's been a little scary.
Yeah. Like you didn't know how to do it and you do now. Yeah. If you're sitting in a place where you always know what's coming up and you are good at it and you can do absolutely everything involved, you never have to take a chance or be a little bit scared of what's coming up. I don't think you're growing. I think you're right. I think you're sitting still. You're not growing.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And it's my personal life as well as my business life. I'm a big scuba diver. I love adventure travel. I love, it's part of my fabric, I think. My DNA is I like to be a little bit scared.
Yeah, I know, me too. A little bit fearless. Yeah. So, did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman along your path, Janine?
I struggled to come up with something unique for this question because I think we all have the same challenges, right? We are dismissed, or we're, not smart enough. We're not, I talked a little bit about the challenges. I came out of school, in the 90s, and the 80s shaped people in that, especially women, in that we could have everything, which we came to think that we had to have everything. That meant, the bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan commercial, right? Like, I think that those were the challenges we put on ourselves, right? Like, we were going to do it all. We were going to slay the world. We were going to be the best of everything and put a lot of extra pressure on ourselves. So I really think that for me, it was the training and the discipline to be able to say, I need this time for me. That's going to make me this better person, right? Like that is what helped me come through all of that. I have been in so many rooms where I was the only woman, right? In the boardroom, in the room where the deal was happening, which I think is why I have really sought out opportunities where it's female leadership. I can relate better to that. I find that those environments are more nurturing, empathetic, authentic, and better at business because of it, right? Like, all the things we were told were bad are actually our assets and our value. So, really it is, I think it's the best of everything to be able to say, haha, all those things you told us, not true.
I love that. I love that perspective too, that just like the uniqueness we bring to the business world and the corporate world and our different professions, like that actually makes businesses better. And it does too. There's studies on it all over the place that show that if you have diversity on your board or diversity in your C-suite or anything like that, that you actually get a better you have a better company. It's more resilient. It earns more, like better. Yeah, I like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Janine, what is the thing that you are most proud of?
Well, I mean, the products and the devices that I've brought to market and helped bring to market, the work that we're doing, is incredible, right? So, of course, I bring it back to where we are today with Pictor, and we're really changing the game when it comes to proteomics. It's not a discovery or a research tool. It is truly an applicable platform to bring this to the clinic. I've done this in a variety of ways. I did this with next generation sequencing back in the day where, it was a research tool, but we thought, this is really to support clinical decision making. And we're doing it now with proteomics. So I am so proud of that. I do think that it is changing lives and really in helping improve, how we do medicine, right? But I'm more proud of the people and the teams that I have had an impact on over the course of these amazing technological experiences. And that to me is the secret sauce, right? Like that is what makes businesses thrive. That's what makes me fulfilled at the end of the day. That's what gets people excited about coming to work, because they have a place where they can thrive and their ideas can bloom and blossom and grow, and they feel fulfilled, right? So it's about the people.
Mm-hmm.
The science and the technology is awesome, but the people, that at the end of the day brings a smile to my face. And I don't care if I get the credit. If they're excited and somebody does a great job because I helped them get to where they are, that is so fulfilling to me.
Yeah. I love that. I love that theory, because I do that with women in finance. We're a really small piece of the pie in finance. And I think it's so important that our voices are heard and that diversity is available. And as I watch a young woman who takes her test and becomes a financial advisor and then goes on to build a beautiful financial services practice and is very fulfilled and helps people. Like you said, like I could help her and she could help 100 people. Like it just magnifies what you can do and the good you can bring in this world. So I really love that thought.
Well, it's like teaching people to fish, right? It's that same sort of philosophy, but and again, I feel like I go back to cutthroat business practices. That's how I cut my teeth, right? Is like, oh, they're eating your lunch, and oh, we got to run them over, and wow, I can't wait to take them down. And just these analogies that are used in business all the time. To me, it just cuts you off at the knees, right? Like, and I don't feel good when I have beat somebody else up, whether it's emotionally or, and I'm not saying I don't love to make money, and I'm not saying I don't want this company to be successful in any company I've ever worked for or with. It's just that mentality. We don't have to use this vernacular and verbiage, and we don't have to be mean and ugly people.
Mm-hmm.
We can be beautiful and authentic and empathetic and still end up, wealthy and successful and all of that, but you don't have to compromise that. Like that to me is the part that I've never really understood about the business world and how it's like this sports metaphor and all the things, right?
Yeah, winning and beating and all that sort of stuff. I like the idea, the language around a table. They're like, there's only so many seats at the table, and so you have to push people out so you get your seat at the table. And I think that maybe a better option would be like, well, let's make the table a little bigger. Let's bring more seats around. Let's grow a little bit. Let's be more collaborative. So I like that kind of visual for the idea of helping others, helping yourself. I feel like it does make the business world better. I don't think you have to have that combative language.
Yeah, agreed. And then it's also integrity, right? Like you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day. And I've worked with a lot of folks on both sides of the table where I just didn't feel like they could do that. And I don't want to be that person, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any advice for a young lady who's kind of just starting down this path that you're already so successful at to help her be successful like you?
Yeah. And I think we've stated all of them. Of course, you have to know your craft, right? You have to know everything ins and outs, upside down and backwards of what it is that you're doing, whether it's diagnostics or biology or creative writing or, whatever it is. But I think that that's table stakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But investing in yourself, like just understanding that it's not selfish, it's not taking away from anybody else in your life if you are spending time on you as an individual. That and that is something I feel like that was really hard for me to understand, that was not selfish. Finding your mentors. I wish that I had done a lot more active mentor seeking as a young professional. It's one of my favorite things to do today, like to mentor, especially young women in STEM who are trying to find their feet and just starting out on their career. Like there's nothing that I get more just personal satisfaction out of. And then, I mentioned just being yourself.
Mm-hmm.
and not trying to fit into somebody else's mold is so critical, because you can do the same job in 1,000 different ways and find the one that's authentic to you and be empathetic along the way.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today and for just sharing your journey. If I have a young lady who wants to get in touch with you, how does she do that?
LinkedIn that is my social network, and I welcome that outreach. I get, as I say, I get a lot of giddy excitement, enjoyment out of watching young people, especially young women, reach out, find themselves, look for mentors, ask questions. And I would very much welcome anyone that wanted to get in touch and talk about what their future in science could look like.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for being such a good role model too. I think that's just really important that we see women doing these important scientific jobs, being in these important places, so that it gives us something to strive for. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Lorie, it was a pleasure. Thanks for having me.